Okay, look, I gotta get this off my chest. This has been on my mind for a while I've been trying to work on this Sonic timeline video, because as it turns out, there's just a lot of issues to keep track of, and when it comes to a particular point in the Sonic timeline, namely the mid-2000s, things just really start to get messy. So, here's what I have here. It's a bit of an excerpt from my original timeline script. I'm actually redoing the script. I'm gonna do a more chronological order type of deal that'll be more easy for newcomers to get into. So this is a bit from the old script, from the first draft, if you will, when I was doing the whole piecing together from generations and like adding stuff on top of like a basic timeline added from that. So just keep that in mind. Now, there's two versions of Generations, you know? There's the one on consoles and PC, that would be White Time Space, and then there's Blue Adventures for the 3DS, right? Call them Gens White and Gens Blue, for simplicity. Now, I make this distinction, right? Because there's different games represented after Adventure 2. Blue Adventure has Rush and Colors, while White Time Space has Heroes, 06, Unleashed, then Colors. And I bring this up because, well, yeah, Rush is brought up, which kind of brings the question, like, where does Sonic Rush fit into the timeline? Because I was looking at the generation setup, and it's like, on console it's these 9 games back to back, but like, the 3DS version adds Rush, Blue Adventure adds Rush, so I'm like, alright, where does Rush fit in exactly then, between these console entries? Because it is important, it's the introduction of Blaze to Cab, which is kind of a big deal. And that's where we kind of get into the problem here, see, because like, it's kind of funny, really. This whole confusion regarding these 3 characters and their positions in the overall chronology. It's always been a point of contention ever since they showed up in the mid-2000s. Blaze had her debut in Sonic Rush in 2005. He said that she's from another dimension, and the shenanigans regarding 2 Eggmen of that each world. She ended up having her world, the Soul Dimension, slowly merge with the main one. That leads to her teaming up with Sonic eventually to stop them and save both worlds. Now, the next year we get Sonic Rivals. This covers the events of Eggman Nega trying to use a special camera to turn the planet into a card. I know that sounds stupid, but it's Sonic. A lot of things get stupid sometimes. Anyways, in this game it shows that Eggman Nega is from the future, namely a couple of centuries or so, like Silver, and Silver also showing up to stop him. Also coming out in 2006 is Sonic the Hedgehog, 2006, you know, Sonic 06, where Silver and Blaze both appear from a destroyed future and are attempting to find a way to deal with the Iblis problem that makes the future suck. So there's a bit of a contradiction between these 3 games and the origins of these characters. So how do we make sense of all this? Well, I already brought up Rivals, I'm just going to get to that out of the way. It's confirmed it takes place after 06. And that due to the events of 06 doing what it does, no one involved actually remembers what happens in that game except maybe Sonic and Elise. But that's a whole other thing we'll worry about later. So just know that from that point onwards, Silver technically meets everyone else for the first time in Rivals. He has no recollection of 06 whatsoever. He does feel a sense of familiarity when he meets Blaze in Sonic Colors DS, which is canon, apparently. Besides that, like, no memories. Eggman Negative, on the other hand, are from multiple sources and conversations with others over the years that there seems to make sense of this by saying that he's originally a descendant of Eggman from the future, but he managed to find his way into the Soul Dimension. Considering how much interdimensional travel occurs in the Sonic series, it seems feasible, so that just leaves the issue of Blaze being in 06, right? Now, I had to check the wiki for this. And it had a section that goes over this whole situation too. There's a statement by a former Sonic team writer, Shiro Maekawa, hope I'm saying that right. He wanted to add a sense of connection between Rush and 06. That would suggest that 06 takes place before Rush. But Ian Flynn was asked about it at some point later on, and he said that he was told that Rush had occurred before 06, that the blaze in 06 is the same one from Rush, and that she doesn't die. It transforms in the burning blaze and seals herself and Ableist into the soul dimension. And the timeline rewrite stuff that happens at the end of that game affects her too. That's why she doesn't remember anything from 06 as well. Why the soul emeralds, which are very important to her character and needed for transformation, are never brought up in 06 is anyone's guess. Maybe they're still in her jacket pockets the whole game, I don't know. No, still with me now. So, TLDR, Rush apparently takes place before 06, according to Sega. Why Blaze doesn't talk to Sonic about anything going on, and how she got dragged into Silver's time, never really explained. She doesn't remember 06 anyway, due to that game's events being erased from the timeline. But she did experience those events technically. Does this mean she still has an incarnation of Iblis sealed inside of her to this day? Maybe. They never really explain, but yeah. You can put Rush before 06, and Rivals would be after. So that kind of resolves the whole conundrum of the order of those three games in particular for the overall Sonic timeline I was working on now. Another problem with 06 though is that it kind of just single-handedly breaks the entire canon with its own time travel shenanigans, which is just a whole other can of worms in and of itself. See, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, Sonic 06 is a hot mess and the timeline organizer's worst freaking nightmare, especially if they're an enthusiast of time travel stories, because there is no consistent means of how the time travel works in this game. I'm pretty sure many a Sonic lore master knows exactly what I'm talking about, but for the uninformed, I'm just going to put it like this. This game makes liberal use of time travel and doesn't have a consistent rule set on how it works. In fact, it seems that whatever method they use kind of just depends on whatever's convenient for the story in the moment. See, in most cases, when someone writes a time travel story, they normally go with one of several methods as to how the time travel mechanics work, and I won't go into full detail on every single method. I'll just try to make a quick summary of the ones used in 06 specifically. First up, stable time loop. When you go back in time, and your actions basically create the timeline you came from in the first place. Think Harry Potter, the Prisoner of Azkaban, when he was saved by a mysterious figure that just turned out to be his future self that he ends up doing himself later on, when he was trying to go back in time to save somebody else. Then you have the timeline overwrite, where your actions in the past will create a new timeline that replaces the original one you came from. Think Back to the Future Part 1, when Marty returns to an improved life for his family, compared to when he left due to his actions in the past affecting the timeline in unexpected ways. How it affects memories is, well, it varies. Then you have the multiverse theory method, where you create splitting timelines where they diverge from one another due to an action you've done in the past that can allow you to travel between the two existing timelines as they're moving along concurrently. Think Future Trunks in Dragon Ball, and how his timeline is still a ruined future after giving Goku the heart medicine in the past. So he still has to deal with like Android 17 and 18 on his own once he goes back home. Here's the problem with Sonic 06, it uses all three. As a certain dead robot would say, this presents a problem. See, normally most people would for the most part just stick to the one method they have. The story revolves around the rules of that one method, best of their ability, except Doctor Who. That's a special case, that's a hot topic I'm not even going to try to tackle right now. I'm not messing with that timey-wimey nonsense. So, here's the thing. There's a time loop situation where Shadow and Silver go back into the past, where Solaris was initially split. The explosion happens as they get there, so they can't do anything about that. But they do help with sealing away Iblis and Nephilis, which is further confirmed by the fact that when Shadow meets Nephilis earlier in the game, it's in the present and Nephilis already knows Shadow due to what Shadow will do later to seal him away in the Scepter of Darkness 10 years ago, because time travel. that same scepter that he sealed him in 10 years ago is the same one that broke in the present. However, later in the story, Elise and Eggman both die from the egg carrier crashing due to a malfunction. Silver suggests to Sonic that they make a portal for him to go back in time just far enough so that he can make his way to the egg carrier before it flies off and rescue Elise before the crash can kill her. Which straight up just contradicts the rules on how it works earlier with sealing away Mephiles. While at the same time, Sonic saving Elise does nothing to change Silver's future from being terrible, thus Blaze having to seal the future version of Iblis into herself to save that timeline as a result. That's that explanation from earlier with the 3 character bits with continuity in there with Rush. Now, I understand that Future Trunks is a major influence for Silver's creation in the first place. You can kind of see how having these 3 key events of time traveling, however, in the same story don't really make any kind of sense, since Solaris being split and sealed is pretty much a predestined thing no matter what. Yet at least dying can be changed with the same time travel methods. Yet Silver's future is just its own separate timeline, like she was just never saved in the first place, so nothing he does to help in the past will fix his home. Yet somehow it works for Sonic. How? And then on top of that, in the final story, Mephiles just straight up kills Sonic, which causes Elise to cry and unleash Iblis, which Mephiles immediately fuses with to become Solaris again, and just eats all the timelines. And from there, Sonic's friends run around to scatter fragments of the timelines to collect the Chaos Emeralds and revive Sonic so that he and the other 2 S-Hogs, Death Shadow and Silver, can go super, beat Solaris once and for all by beating his ass across 3 points of time simultaneously. Solaris reverts back to his original flame form, which somehow allows Sonic and Elise to travel back in time to before the experiment had even occurred in the first place, and blow out the Solaris flame so none of these events can ever happen to begin with. And that's how we get the final cutscene, which is the only part that canonically happens in the timeline currently. Sonic visits Oleana during the Festival of the Sun. He goes off without a hitch. There's no lab experiments resulting in an explosion, no Eggman attacks, no fire monster sealed inside the princess, no time traveling contradictions, just Sonic passing through and Elise kind of just senses him in the wind, and that's it. And I just want to give my props to Blaze Runner of DeviantArt for making that Sonic 06 timeline, because this looks painful to make. So with all that in mind, during the fact that during the events of Generation, Sonic revisits Crisis City from the destroyed future that Silver came from, that is from a now erased timeline, it's kind of an odd thing to see considering it shouldn't exist, but in the context of Generation's plot it kind of does make sense since Eggman has been tampering with the whole timeline during this, so heck, it was probably there before the other ones for all we know. Who can say? One thing that puzzled everyone, however, is that Blaze seems to clearly remember being there before and refers to it by name, so maybe Eggman's tampering with the timeline brought back her memories of 06, who can say for sure. But here's the scary part. None of what we've gone over is the reason why 06 kind of just breaks the entire canon of the series. Because the Blue Chaos Emerald, it ends up stuck in the bootstrap paradox, where time-traveling Silver gives it to a child Elise in the past, right? She holds on to this thing for 10 years, which then results in her throwing it to Sonic when she's being kidnapped, who then gives it to Eggman to trade for the princess back, only for Eggface to pull a fast one on him with that time machine that he used. Then Eggman puts the emerald into the Egg Genesis for some reason, which is promptly destroyed by Silver, who then takes the Blue Chaos Emerald from there and has it with him until he time travels into the past with Shadow and leaves it with Elise. So you can see the problem here, right? Since The Blue Chaos Emerald is kind of important. It appears in almost every other game in this entire series. Like every major entry to that point. Like it's pretty much this one action contradicts the entire series. You know, since Sonic kind of needed that emerald in every prior game to stop Eggman, but at least holding it during the events of all those games would kind of create a problem there. And if it's stuck in the Bootstrap Paradox, it can't appear in the past prior to Silver showing up with it in the past, or any future events after he time travels to the past with it, which means that the Blue Emerald wouldn't be able to appear in any of the flashbacks or lore stuff involving any of the ancient aliens or the echidnas or any of that stuff, or any future events like Unleashed or Generations itself. But before this game retcons its own plot out of existence with more time travel, this just doesn't add up at all, and I hate it. The only reason the Blue Emerald even seems to be able to show up during the finale to begin with is because Solaris basically destroyed the timelines so that there is no paradox for it to be stuck in, because the timeline is gone. Honestly, I can't even blame most people if they can't keep up with this whole situation mentally, because that is just a whole other kind of mess you can try to comprehend, and time travel is already complicated enough as it is for a lot of people. I have legit tried to discuss this sort of thing with friends before, and some of them straight up just started getting headaches trying to figure out the time travel in detail like this. Hell, I probably lost some of y'all just trying to explain this. I am legit just that one nerdy ass weirdo that will go out of his way to learn about time travel rules and try to figure all this stuff out. So if you ever wonder why I say the final act of Kingdom Hearts 3 don't bother me as much as it does most fans, it's because I've already been through this stuff with Sonic. And at this point, like at least with Kingdom Hearts, I expect there to be some batshit insanity in their world building, even before they started using time travel, so yeah. It's because of all this that when I usually make Sonic timelines, I kind of just quarantine Sonic 06's plot into its own separate timeline so that it doesn't corrupt everything else with these contradictory time travel methods and Bootstrap Paradoxing are one of the most crucial MacGuffins in the entire franchise. If you want to debate with me on this, you're welcome to try, but I think I'm good on just letting 06 be its own separate set of timelines to occur within its own mess that eventually erases itself from the main so that the main timeline can occur. Less of a mess for everything else, because then we already got a lot of entries to cover and they all fit into one another chronologically without 06 mucking things up. So yeah, I'm letting those last two scenes, the time travel least blowing up the flame and the festival, the sun going off the boundary problems, that's the only part of 06 that happens in the main timeline. And that everything else from that game is its own timeline that somehow has some version of events prior to 06 occur without a Blue Chaos Emerald. I have no idea how. But maybe you can headcanon something if you feel like. I'm just glad to be over with talking about how 06 fits into the timeline now, thank the noise. I need a drink. I need some water. So yeah, that's my little rant on some of the time travel and dimensional issues that just be coming up with the Sonic series when trying to piece together a timeline. The mid-2000s was just a really strange time when it came to like figuring out continuity. So yeah, I'm gonna get to the rest of this timeline script hopefully and see if I can get this done before the end of the year. Later.